Well, a major development in the war in Gaza. Hamas has accepted an Egyptian-Qatari ceasefire proposal. Now it's in the hands of Israel. The news came just hours after the Israeli military ordered about 100,000 Palestinians to begin evacuating Rafah. That move is not sitting well with U.S. President Joe Biden. A warning, the video in this story is disturbing. People in Rafah packing up and doing what they can to find shelter after they awoke to a sinister message from the Israeli Defense Forces. Evacuation notices raining down from the sky. Israel appears closer to launching an offensive on the southern Gaza city. Shortly after warning, smoke was seen billowing from the sky. With little time to flee, the Israeli army announced targeted strikes on Rafah, a move that has angered human rights activists.
There is nowhere safe to go in Gaza. The Israeli government has previously marked areas as safe and subsequently dropped bombs on those areas. It has also struck civilians following Israeli evacuation orders, trying to flee to safety.
Israel's closest ally, the United States, wants the operation called off. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke today by phone.
We cannot and we will not speak for IDF operations, but we've made clear our views about operations in Rafah that could potentially put more than 1 million innocent people at greater risk. During his call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, the president again made this clear.
And while that phone call took place, as thousands were packing up to leave Rafah, breaking news was learned around the world. Hamas said in a statement it accepted an Egyptian-Qatari proposal for a ceasefire to halt the 7-month-long war. People took to the streets in Gaza in jubilation, but at this hour, a deal now rests in the hands of Israel. Families of the Israeli hostages held captive in Gaza took to a major highway in Tel Aviv demanding that Israel accept the deal to bring their loved ones home.
We expect from the Israeli government to take this deal to save all the remaining hostages who are still alive. Save lives. Don't talk about fighting and blood.
Urge the Israeli government to do the right thing and sign this hostage deal. The hostages have no more time. We cannot wait. This delaying tactics, feet dragging, cannot continue even one day longer.
The details of the proposed ceasefire have not yet been released.
We got a response from Hamas. Now, Director Burns is working through that, trying to assess it, working with the Israelis. I mean, my goodness, folks, I don't know that it gets any more sensitive than right now. And the worst thing that we can do is start speculating about what's in it.
Netanyahu's office says the deal agreed to by Hamas is far from Israel's demands. However, the Israeli government will send a delegation to negotiate. In the meantime, its war cabinet decided that Israel will continue its operation in Rafah.
If Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone. But we know we're not alone, because countless decent people around the world support our just cause. And I say to you, we will defeat our genocidal enemies. Never again is now.
Netanyahu claims that seizing Rafah is vital to ensuring Hamas can't rebuild its military capabilities and repeat the October 7th attack that triggered the war. He has vowed to continue their campaign until Hamas is destroyed. Barbara Slavin is a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Center in Washington. She founded and directed the Future of Iran initiative at the Atlantic Council. And as a journalist, Barbara covered key foreign policy issues, including the Arab-Israeli conflict. Barbara, with the threat of invading Rafah on the table, what did you make of the ceasefire deal being accepted by Hamas today?
Fingers crossed that this actually holds. There are many ways in which it could possibly go wrong. But I think it's a confluence of things. It's not one particular thing. This war has gone on far, far, far too long. And there has been pressure for a ceasefire now for months, coming from the United States and coming from others as well. The problem has been, that the Israelis, the government of Bibi Netanyahu at least, seemed insistent on somehow scoring more victories, if you can call it that, in Gaza, was not satisfied with the offer of hostages, Israeli hostages to be released. And Netanyahu, at least up until now, has wanted to reserve the right to continue the war. Now, we don't have all the details yet as I'm speaking, but it looks as though this will be a several-month ceasefire. At least that's the intention. Hamas wanted a permanent end to the war and a complete Israeli withdrawal. So details, as I say, need to be filled in. There are no guarantees that this will work, that it won't be violated. But as we're speaking now, I'm hopeful that more than 30 Israeli hostages will finally be freed, including elderly people, women, children, and that the threat of an attack, an Israeli mass attack on Rafah has been put aside.
Now, as you mentioned, we don't know all the details just yet. We've heard Israel has been very generous within it. What are you expecting to see happen if Israel accepts the deal? Could this be the end?
Well, one hopes so. I mean, the first thing is getting the hostages out and getting humanitarian aid in. So we have seen under U.S. pressure that there have been more entrances to Gaza that have been opened up. More aid has been going in. But at the same time, just on Sunday, the head of the World Food Program, Cindy McCain, said that North Gaza was already essentially in a famine situation because of the lack of supplies going in there. So urgently needed, get food, medicine, other supplies into north of Gaza and then all of Gaza, and make sure that children are not dying of starvation. I think that's really the essential first priority. Then we can begin to talk about what happens next.
When it comes to Rafah, Antony Blinken made it clear that the U.S. has not seen a credible plan to protect civilians. With Netanyahu firm on finishing his war on Hamas, how might the U.S. respond if the combat continues after a ceasefire?
I think this is one thing that the Biden administration has been quite consistent about, that Rafah is no-go. After 35,000 dead now, and even if you say, all right, maybe 10,000 were Hamas fighters, the vast majority are women and children, are civilians who have simply been slaughtered in this terrible, terrible war. And there is no patience anywhere in the Biden administration for a continuation of that sort of tactic. Remember, we're having an election, too, a very important presidential election, and Joe Biden desperately wants this war to be history and for us to be very firmly in the reconstruction, rehabilitation, diplomatic stage of things in the Middle East. And if this ends now, we have 6 months before our election to make some significant progress on those goals.
Barbara, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Trending Now.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking.